We're here today again with Aging Advantage and Eamon Gantner and Capriano, your State Matters LLC, to bring you this presentation in our series on preparing your legacy. Your guide kind of roadmap to planning and protection, peace of mind. Aging Advantage, again, we're a nonprofit here in the St. Louis area, established in 2017, and we have a team that tries to ensure quality of services that we provide to the elderly in the community, 60 years older, and any individuals with disabilities that are younger than that. And different families, if you're trying to look at different aspects and help those people. So we help with a lot of family caregiver issues. We have some various programs of care management, mental health supports, home delivered meal assessments, and what have you. In this series of programs, we're bringing to you, we're partially funded by donations and support from the City St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, and with the ARPA funds that were provided to help households that experienced a negative public impact from COVID-19, whether that's economic or housing or social isolation and different things, where all these topics kind of come together. And we've been talking about just regular estate planning and your documents and care management and all kinds of things, but it's like, how do they all go together? It's kind of what we're going to talk about today, I think. So I'll let Amanda take it from here for a minute.
All right, so if you've been paying attention to the series, don't know if you've seen our other little videos. This is our 7th little session in what we're calling your Preparing Your Legacy sort of series. And as Gail mentioned, it's a roadmap to planning, protection, and peace of mind. So really, we're looking at aging holistically here, and just a lot of the different things that you need to keep in mind, and ways in which you can plan for the aging process. So today we're talking about community resources and support systems. So how can community resources help you as a caregiver or as an individual who needs care? And what sort of support services are offered in the St. Louis area? We're really very fortunate here to have, hundreds and hundreds of organizations that really focus their work on the seniors of this community, whether it's, providing meals or transportation or emotional support or care management, assistance with placement, or, just all kinds of different avenues of support for our senior community. Same with, the Department, the Veterans Affairs Office. They also provide great supports. So that's really what we're kind of going to focus on today, is what's out there, because it is hard to know if you don't work in this area, or you might not have gone through it before. Maybe you're a child of a parent who's aging, and you want to think about, okay, what sort of organizations are out there that could help them.
And I think it's important that nobody can do it all alone. There's so many of these supports, and they're ever changing. And so it takes a lot of work to narrow down and find the correct thing. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on today.
Right. And focus on getting you to the organizations even that can get you to the next step, right? If you don't even know where to start, we're going to talk about that today too. So who are we? Gail and I both work for Eamon Gantner and Capriano. We're an estate planning and elder law firm in St. Louis. We also do postmortem work, so that's going to be your probate, your trust administration. But we are all members of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys and the American Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, and we're also all accredited by the VA to handle veterans claims. This is me. My name is Amanda Wilson. I'm an associate attorney here. I'm licensed in the state of Missouri. I have a BA in English and a BA in economics from the University of Mississippi, and I have my JD from Wake Forest, and all of the other items I mentioned before. This is our elder law team at Eamon Gantner and Capriano. So myself and Gail, who's presenting with me, and then we also have another LCSW. Her name's Maggie, and we sort of all work together on every case with every client to ensure that we can really provide whatever support is needed. So why community resources matter, and Gail just mentioned this. No one can navigate aging or caregiving alone. It's just too much, and there are too many different factors that need to be considered and kept in mind, and there are too many moving parts, you know, between financials and health considerations and you know, living arrangements, and the list just goes on and on and on. And really it's safety concerns, you know. Not only are we thinking about individuals who really can no longer care for themselves, who need that support in order to remain safe, but is that, am I?
Yeah, something's going on with your computer, so while you gotta work on that, I'll maybe talk. But it is interesting about that. Just you have to try to utilize the different available resources to prevent a crisis and reduce the stress. People are going through so much of things. We all have our, you know, as if we're a caregiver, we have our own life going on, and that has you know, that kind of just contributes to a lot of that stress. And we have to kind of figure out what's happening with that. And I feel like there's in St. Louis, we do again have really connected resources, and everybody seems to try to help each other out instead of a lot of competition with things. Um, so, yeah, we might end up. I know Amanda's continuing to have a little bit of a problem with her Zoom, and so if we somehow go away, we will come back. But one thing is that we there's just so many of these different resources available, and they're really a lifeline to get things done. And just before we started this, I'd gotten a call and the person was really lost on what to do. And so and their family member was having 24-hour care in the home, and that was being pretty not sustainable. And Amanda and I have worked on a case recently where the person was trying to do that in their home for their loved one, and it was just running into a lot of problems with, you know, it's just various different caregivers, different things happening, um, and really hard to keep up with. So, I think okay, so Amanda will be back, and she kind of was sharing her PowerPoint, so we will, we'll go back to that in a minute. But there is all kinds of different resources here in the community, and you have the community resources, like the Aging and Disability Resource Centers. So some of these main ones that I'm talking about are really good starting points to get into, and then they can narrow it down. And then you have the area agencies on aging. And so with our nonprofit, we are supported a lot from the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, and that they will help provide the home deliver meals and different transportation, respite care benefits, and also they tend to get providers. There's many providers, at least probably 15 different ones or more that they contract to provide very specific services. But you also have all over the country, every single area is covered by an area agency on aging. So the one for St. Louis County and then some of the other surrounding counties, parts of them is Aging Ahead, which a lot of people, they used to be called the Mid-East Area Agency on Aging, but so some people know it by that. But Aging Ahead covers that county, and then there's just all the further out counties. There's 26, I believe, 26 AAAs in Missouri, and so that's always a really good starting point. And then you have your senior centers and adult day programs. A lot of the senior centers are supported through the area agencies on aging, but you have have like adult daycare, adult day centers, that provide a lot of services too. In the senior centers, instead of getting your home delivered meal, you can have congregate meals and get there and have the meal and um, have that going for you. A lot of activities and programs, so you get that social connections. Um, we have a lot of the faith-based and nonprofit organizations as well, and they really, I think with the faith-based, it provides a lot of companionship, a lot of family, family interactions, food, a lot of outreach, and they are watching out for, people in their community and others. So they're a really good source um, to connect with. You have a lot of different public benefit programs, the Medicaid waivers, the SNAP benefits, energy assistance, a lot of rent support, and all those previous things that we've been talking about today can really kind of connect you with those programs. Right now in the local area, I saw on the news this morning, it was talking quite a bit about um, the different programs that are kind of going into play with the SNAP, that people don't have their benefits right now and they're panicking. And so a lot of people are stepping up. There's many, many events going on in the community to give people those benefits. And making sure that they have enough food while the government shutdown is happening. And then a lot of places have support groups and different other professional resources, care management, legal aid of Eastern Missouri. But there's all kinds of programs that you can be steered to, whether they're being covered by someone or you're contributing some money. So we've kind of been continuing to talk while you're gone, Amanda, but you can share your thoughts on these topics here.
No, thank you. I apologize for that little, my computer just wasn't having it for a second, so we had to restart, and now we seem back on track here. I'll share a few helpful connection points. So these are just a few good resources for starting out. So if you're just beginning on this, looking for community connection journey, Voice is a great organization. They have a lot of good educational opportunities. They have good programming and really good outreach. So Voice is a great place to go to for help. The St. Louis Library System, so St. Louis County and St. Louis City Libraries, St. Charles County Libraries, they all have great educational resources as well. And they're just wonderful resources for our population. So that's a good place to check too. Then there's the elder care locator, and through that you could just Google elder care locator and it'll come up. You can put in your zip code and it brings up some good agencies that help sort of in these different areas. So nutrition, transportation, care management, all of that kind of stuff. So if you're concerned about, okay, what's nearest to me, that might be a good resource for you. Then St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, I think Gail already mentioned, but they're a great resource, as is Aging Ahead. Aging Ahead does a lot with meal and nutritional assistance. So those are just
I think, on Friday we went out to St. Charles to this or St. Peter's to this wonderful library, and I know our program they had it listed that people would come to that. So all the libraries have various different programs going on that people can go to, and they're kind of introductory type of classes, and so those are really good to
and
take
usually
advantage of.
free as well. Yeah. Which is wonderful. And it's a good place just to get to know other people who might be going through similar things that you are, because if they're also interested in this talk, okay, they might be in a similar boat, and you might meet people, make connections where you can sort of help one another sort of field this.
It turned into a nice kind of group and discussion about all kinds of things that were happening. Good, a lot of good examples and support. Because again, they're usually people from that local community right there too.
Mhm. Mhm.
So with Aging Advantage, again, we are a nonprofit here in St. Louis area, and our mission is helping older adults and caregivers to stay safe and supported and connected with dignity and independence. And again, we've kind of talked about the Area Agency on Aging and the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA dollars, and those are kind of around for a few more months, and they're kind of running out because hopefully people have gotten the help and recovery from coming after the COVID-19 effects. And right now a big, problem more so in our area has been the tornado that happened in May. So a lot of the people in the city are still having problems with that, and we try to do some connections and resources with that.
Here are a few specialized resources. So again, we're focused on the St. Louis area, but these sort of narrow down to some of the more specific illnesses and diseases that we focused on in one of our previous series about dementia and other special care considerations. And when we think about these really debilitative problems, a lot of times they do require sort of a different skill set and a different type of connection. And so fortunately, the St. Louis area has created a lot of these different groups like the Alzheimer's Association, Parkinson's Foundation. There's a St. Louis Regional ALS Association, Multiple Sclerosis Society. There's a cancer support community. I got a little typo there, but there's also hospital-based memory and palliative care programs. We talked about palliative care in our last session, and it's extremely helpful for individuals. So this is just another list of good resources if it's applicable to you, and great, opportunity for community engagement and support there.
Yeah, and I think in our talk, when we did talk about these disease specific things, I don't even think we ended up mentioning these different groups, but they all have some components of different financial supports, just support groups. They also have just very specialized help. Another one's the Huntington's Foundation has some things, and the VA has a lot of resources here in our local community. And again, all the different hospital-based things.
Right. So caregiver and family support. I think a relatively common misconception is when we're talking about community resources and we're talking about some of these support systems, we're thinking of the individual who is receiving care. We're thinking about the elderly, and all of those resources are wonderful. They're very helpful, but we need to keep in mind support for those who are providing the care as well. Too often family members take on such a huge burden in sort of taking on this entire caregiving role, and they take over everything from helping with activities of daily living to help doing all the financials to trying to keep a loved one at home as long as they can. And so we really want to bring attention to the fact that caregivers should seek support as well, because it's a huge job, and it's a huge job on top of the rest of life, right? It's not like the rest of your everyday, requirements and obligations just go away. You still are probably working. You still probably have a family of your own you need to take care of, or you have a spouse who needs you. And so local respite and day programs can provide relief. That's a good outlet. If you're thinking about, okay, I have been doing all of the caregiving here and I'm burnt out, I can't handle this anymore. Maybe you do consider something like a day program where your loved one could go for, from 8 to 3 or from 8 to noon even, and you can use that time sort of to yourself. Um, and same with respite care. That's a good option for some people. But also seek counseling and peer groups that, you know, they'll connect you with people who are going through the same thing. And it can be so extremely isolating when you're sort of living in this bubble of, uh, I'm the sole caretaker of this other person, and it's not isolating. You're not alone, yes, but you need to seek connection to other people who have gone through the same or similar circumstances, because it really does provide a world of support and is an outlet you might not even realize that you're needing.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, even though you're not alone, you're feeling alone.
Yeah.
And, you're kind of sandwiched in there. We talked about that the other day too, that you just have so much of your other responsibilities and what's happening. And you're just trying to juggle all that and feeling that burden of keeping your loved one safe. And I think the other day we talked a little bit about like family meetings or the other siblings. And a lot of times people tend to take on that whole role. They don't step out and ask for the help that they need. So trying to organize that. And I'm sorry, we end up talking about Friday that about bringing a family meeting presentation very soon. So kind of go through the components of that. It wasn't part of our series, but it was a tiny bit of what we talked about. So I think we're going to have a whole program on that because people really they don't, step in and help when it's not a very specific request a lot of times. Well, people will say, "Well, give me a call if you need anything." And then they think the person will give them a call, and a lot of times you people don't because they don't know really what you need.
Okay, so how do I get connected? So if we're just taking this from the very beginning and you're thinking, okay, some of these resources might really help me. So what do I need to do? Um, Take actionable steps toward utilizing local resources and building community connection. So this sounds very um, sort of big picture, right? You need to break it down into actionable steps. Who am I going to reach out to today? Which one organization am I going to look at their website, or am I going to call somebody and, just see what's out there? So try to break it down as much as you can and do a little bit every day. And before you know it, you will sort of be forging these paths toward, understanding the care network that's out there, understanding what sort of resources might benefit you, what sort of resources are available, and what that looks like. Don't be afraid to reach out. I think so many people, it's either a fear thing or it might be a shame thing for some, that they think I can take care of myself. I don't need, I don't need help making my meals, or I don't need help getting to the grocery, or um, I don't want someone to come in here and help me clean the house. It's fine how it is, but it doesn't need to be something that's shameful or fear inducing, because the reality is we all need help. We have doctors that we go to when we feel ill. We go to lawyers when we need, legal advice or legal support. It's the same thing in this sort of aging context of there are things that I can no longer handle by myself, and that's okay. Um, Ask friends or loved ones for help too. Ask them what they've done, ask them maybe some resources that they've used. Word of mouth is super important, and more people than you know are sort of dealing with the same problems. Um, so the more you isolate yourself, it's really only a detriment to you or your loved one who, maybe you're doing your best to provide care for them, but with more people just provides more support.
Well, and I think we've talked about this a few times too, a little bit about when you're doing this, don't do it to the sense to get yourself so confused either. So that's where care management comes in because it helps you to bring these pieces together and And if a care manager kind of helps and looks at what your major goals are, and they have an understanding of the different resources, they can bring several, I'm sorry, they can bring several different things together for you. We've noticed here, and I mean, it's heard me many times tell people, stop, don't listen to, don't listen to your beautician, your this person. Everybody's situation is a little bit different. And so so many times people come in and they've done some kind of weird thing that it's really impacting them, and they'll say, oh, but so and so told me, and this person told me. A lot of times when they're looking up stuff on the internet too, things are very state specific or very locally, specific, and they're looking up all kinds of different programs that aren't applicable. So it's just really important to really make sure that the people are have an understanding of what's happening.
That's right. And ask us. I mean, Gail has been, seriously involved in this community for as long as I have been alive. I know that. And she knows, she knows the resources, the organizations, the programs. She knows who to get in contact with, depending on what you need. And all of this is sort of necessarily broad because everybody's experience is different, just like Gail was saying, and exactly what sort of help will most benefit you is completely case specific. So we can't, sit here on a Zoom and give you an exact answer, but come and ask us because we'll do everything we can to get you to the people you need to be in contact with.
That's kind of a scary thought that I'm not saying your birthday. But anyways.
I think it's a respectable thing.
Well, one time, before, of course, I used to discuss, well, it was a program that can help the elderly, the community 60 and over. And then after I turned 60, I was like, oh my goodness, that's myself. So
It's a good thing. It just brings experience, So building your resource network. What are we talking about when we say, let's put a network together. Let's see what's out there in the community. And one way to do that is to create your own resource directory. And I'm going to show you that on the next slide as sort of an example of this resource directory that you could develop. And keep it somewhere convenient, somewhere where your loved ones can see it. If you're the caregiver providing support for someone else, somewhere that they can see it. And make sure you keep it updated as well, because so many times these agencies change, names change. Gail and I always talk about facilities right now. I mean, it seems like every time somebody new comes in, they mention a facility and we're like, where are you talking about? And it's a facility we've known forever, but all of a sudden they've changed names.
if you're not getting out there, I know people say it, and then me and Maggie, we kind of were like, well, wait, where are you talking about? And it's frequently changing right now.
Right. And it's confusing for us as professionals in the field. So it's even more confusing for, people in the community who aren't necessarily deeply involved in this. So make sure you keep these lists updated and share them with your family, with your loved ones. So this is sort of an example of what I'm talking about, a resource directory. So if you think of, you make your own table of, here are the service categories that I'm interested in. Maybe it's care management, and maybe you need some home repairs to make the home more safe for yourself or your loved one. And maybe you're interested in faith and emotional support or something like that. So first thing, come up with a few of these categories that might be useful to you. Then you can start looking at local programs that provide that sort of support. And so here, I've sort of filled in all of these areas with just some good examples. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list. It's just meant to provide you with examples or sort of a jumping off point. But they're all great organizations that help in these different sort of areas of support. So you have Aging Ahead and Meals on Wheels that both provide meals and nutrition. for our senior community. Then we have the website written down here, so it's easy to access, as well as phone numbers or contact information. So if you contact these resources, make sure you add, maybe you talk to Stacy at Aging Ahead and you have her email or you have her individual phone number, then add it in there so that, okay, now you're getting more definite, not only do you know this organization is there that could help you, but you know somebody in the organization and you might have told them your specific situation. And so now you have a solid connection there. And you can build off that to start to get some of these supports in place. And then you can put notes in there too, like what exactly the organization does, or maybe, maybe if you contact Stacy from Aging Ahead and she says, okay, we're going to bring your dad meals once a week on Tuesdays. So you write that in your notes column. And so this would just be a really helpful tool. It's a great way to sort of organize and make smaller this really overwhelming idea of navigating community resources and finding support. And like Gail said, it's hard to do on your own. You really do need to reach out to someone who can help you with some of this. And yeah, so that's super important. Some other organizations that I mentioned here, St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, they help with transportation. County Older Resident Program, they help with home repairs. Caregiver support, there's the Caregiver Club and NAMI St. Louis. These are both organizations designed specifically for caregivers, not those receiving care. So the Caregiver Club is really focused on caregivers of those with dementia. And NAMI sort of handles a wide range, but those are both good resources. Then we've got Aging Advantage, which we've spoken about, and Amy Gantner and Capriano, which is our law firm for legal and financial help that you may need. Then as far as faith and emotional support goes, maybe you have a local church that you've been involved with in the past or that you're currently involved with, or maybe it's just a good idea to get involved with a local church. There's also Circle of Care St. Louis. They're a great resource for sort of emotional support and counseling as you go through this aging process or as you go through the caregiving process. And then volunteer companionship, LifeWise SCL is just one example of sort of a companionship program. So if you yourself are someone who would benefit from companionship, because sometimes it is lonely, aging can be lonely. And so that might be a good resource for you as well. So developing something like this really helps you start taking those first steps toward figuring out the resource community and finding resources that are beneficial for you.
Something I thought about as you're talking, Amanda, is that a lot of times people wait until it's the emergency, where a lot of these things like LifeWise has just a ton of programs there, but they do have that specific program we're talking about. But a lot of the other nonprofits, do have people help volunteer, or even at the senior center, if you're going to the senior center and playing cards or doing whatever activity, or going to visit other people that that are living in independent living or assisted living, so that you're getting to see the other communities and what's happening there. Kind of gives you a feel for what you would like or not like. And like through your church, they have all kinds of, community programs, and just being involved and seeing what's happening helps you to support and kind of flush this in. Because if you go and visit somebody and you are like, oh no, I would never want to live there, that doesn't go on your list. Because when something urgent is starting to happen, or your systems are kind of failing, and someone steps in, all of a sudden it's an emergency to try to assist you. You've kind of have this list, like, here, and here are the people that I've been getting support from. And so then that's a place to start.
I think that's a good point too, Gail. Almost all of these organizations have volunteer opportunities. So maybe, even if you're not looking at needing this care right away, get involved in these communities, go and help other people who might benefit from your companionship, or you can, drive some people around a couple days a week. It's, these are great ways to get involved and to sort of give back to organizations that give so much to our area. So just another thing to keep in mind there. So just sort of a review, overall, there are hundreds of resources in the St. Louis area designed to assist our aging population and their caregivers. We really want to encourage you with this particular presentation, but in our series at large, to get involved with this great community, whether it's with our law firm or with Gail's care management organization, or if it's just completely on your own, that's okay too. But it really is a great community. And there's so much good in our senior care community and so many opportunities. So we would recommend you get involved. For those people who do need assistance, don't suffer unnecessarily. Reach out and ask for help. And just know that aging doesn't need to be overwhelming, and it doesn't need to be isolating. I think so often we see people who just get stuck in their ways, and things are slowly getting more and more and more difficult. And like Gail mentioned, they tend to come to us when it's already too late. We've already sort of reached that breaking point of, okay, something has to change now because you didn't get some of those supports in previously, right? And so now we are at crisis mode, and your options tend to get much, much fewer when we get to that crisis stage. And your ability to choose and have sort of autonomy over what happens ends up a little bit more limited. And so we want to avoid that as much as possible. And the best way to do that is to plan ahead and to be proactive about your health and sort of your care needs and your living situation as much as possible. And it doesn't need to be scary, and it doesn't need to be overwhelming. And it's a reality, nobody's getting out of this alive. And for the vast majority of us, we will need some assistance with our care at some point in our lives. So it's not something that avoiding will make the problem go away. It will just make it more difficult for you when you get there.
I had a person before, and this is a little more final than needing care, but they went ahead and they went to get a prepaid funeral, but then they canceled it like the next day because their kids were like, "Wait, what? You're planning to die?" It was like, we all are gonna die, we all are gonna need some kind of help at some point. So planning for it is not a bad thing.
Well, and I think too often people think it's like, oh, if you think about it, then it's going to happen. Just not the case. I have powers of attorney in place right now. It doesn't mean I want to get hit by the bus, but it means I'm prepared if I do. Um, and it's sort of the same idea in this care management and sort of looking at the process of aging landscape.
And I think what we ended up talking about on Friday too is when you get those documents, if you're getting powers of attorney, letting the people who are the powers of attorney know that they're going to step in at some point. And it's kind of the same with this. If you're pre-planning and looking at things, letting your loved ones know, hey, here's my list of things, so that they're not just trying to step in. And I know, I think someone else was giving the example that then when they called the person and said, your loved one, or maybe perhaps Lee was saying that on Thursday with someone, from when she was talking with the hospice situation. It's just really, people need to know that they're gonna have to step in.
That's a great point, and step in, legally, yes, but also in a caretaking, perspective. I know for my own family, my grandmother passed away first, and then my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, and it wasn't until he was diagnosed that he told my parents, I grew up across the street from my grandparents' house. And my grandparents used to come over every Sunday for dinner. And so it was at dinner on Sunday, and he was like, well, I have this diagnosis. And he said, I'm going to die in my house. So I don't know how we're going to make it happen, but that's what's going to happen. Um, and so, fortunately, my parents were sort of at a place in life where they could manage that, and they were willing to manage that. I mean, that's another huge hurdle, is not only do you have the ability, but are you willing to do it? Is that something that you sort of have the bandwidth to handle? Because there was no part of it that was easy. Um, and
I
if
think
you
that
have those expectations of your kids, you should probably let them know that, so that, you can have those conversations.
I think that's what we were talking about with the healthcare and the other day, because whoever was contacted, and I've seen it here too, and people are like, I didn't know this, or if you're expecting your healthcare power of attorney to do X, Y, and Z, and they're like, I would never do that. They didn't believe in that, and they won't do it. So really making sure that the person that you're designating on any of this stuff is willing to do it, is kind of in line, even if they don't see it the same way, that they're going to follow the way that you've talked about with them, and that's their wishes. And I think we talked about, in certain states, my dad was from Michigan, and so I learned some different things there, that in Michigan you have to sign that you are agreeing to take that healthcare advocate, they call it healthcare advocate role, and so that then you're not surprised that you're stepping in. But yeah, it seems like your family did a really good job of talking about it, who was going to do what at the point when your grandpa brought it up.
Right. And that, I mean, that communication is just the most important thing. Um, and you're exactly right with those healthcare documents. It's not only is the person willing to do it, but are they willing to follow your wishes? Are and that's really hard for some people. And just the idea of, some people are more accepting of, if I'm in that situation, I can pull the plug. I can be the person that says, it's time and you're gone. And some people don't, it's not that they can't do it, but it would be much, much more difficult for them. So just knowing, I mean, different personalities and who is in the best position. I know my mom has my aunt on her healthcare power of attorney, and her sister was a doctor, and she's very analytical, and she's very to the point, and she's very cut and dry about things. But my mother chose her because of all of that. It's not because it's the closest person to her, but she knows my aunt will look at things very analytically, and if it's time, she will make that decision. And that's what my mom wants, is she doesn't want to be kept alive unnecessarily. Um, or through a lot of the things that Lee had talked to us about the other day, through CPR and on event, and so when we get to that point, knowing who your people are and who you're choosing in these capacities is super important. Okay, so what's next? So we have one more presentation for you in our series. And right now it's called Pulling It All Together. We might think of a more creative name for it. But right now it's just going to be, sort of an overview of where all we've gone through this series, because it's been, it'll be eight different sessions on a lot of different topics. And so it'll be sort of a good opportunity to reflect and to think about, okay, what do I need to take from each one of these steps? And when I look at my aging process, what do I want it to look like? And what do I need?
Yeah, and I think it's important to say here, and we'll probably say it again on Wednesday, is that we're able to, and you're able to go out and and give presentations on any parts of this, or actually on Friday, we kind of gave a session on, you
Yeah.
know, all the different aspects being pulled together at the library on Friday. And so, if anybody's looking for that in the community, they can reach out, and we'll be happy to come to your church or the library or wherever.
That's right. And if anybody needs help with community resources or supports, let us know. Um, you've got my email there and our website, but I'll be able to connect you with Gail too, and we can help you however we can. Or if like Gail said, if you want us to come and speak, we would be happy to do that as well.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of I'm sorry, Gail.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is an overview of where all we've been. So we've got all of our sessions listed here, and what we've talked about. And then November 5th, it's this Wednesday at 11 a.m. It'll be our last session. And again, just kind of going over everything.
And I was just going to say, with this being on our Facebook page, if you do have any specific questions or need to reach out, just put it in the comments there, or you can send us a specific message and we'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
But thanks. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody.